thought forum where we design strategies and experiences that create change that lasts. I'm also representing the Grapevine. Does anyone know what the Grapevine is? Probably not. Oh, somebody does. We are a collective, and let me advance the slide. We are a collective of these organizations here in Pittsburgh: Thought Forum, Wall to Wall, Landisburg, and Fifth Influence. We came together about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever.
Long time ago.
While ago, and we just brainstormed a couple of ideas, and we thought, you know what? The design community and the creative services community felt a little fragmented in Pittsburgh, and it needed some connective tissue. At least that's what we thought. And so let's play our role in trying to pull that community together. This was also post-COVID. Things were a little different. And some professional organizations that typically did that were still trying to catch their legs. So we all came together and we said, let's start to host some events that can do that. So we are doing that tonight. And we can't do this, I have to say, without some of our sponsors here, Alloy, 26, and Nova Place. So we certainly appreciate anybody who's here. I don't know if anyone's here representing Alloy 26 and Nova Place, but we certainly appreciate the space, cool space. So we thought a while ago, let's brainstorm. Why are we here? We realized that there are lots of things we can talk about in this community. And what became something that rose to the top was all the excitement around Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's in the news. It's great. Lots of good stuff happening. We've got the new airport. Does everyone know that it opens on Tuesday? We've got the NFL draft. I mean, come on. That's big time. The Mayo race, right? There's news there. Also, does anybody know that National Geographic just designated Pittsburgh as the only place in America?
Written by this woman up here on Sunday to give Chris she was the writer.
Really? Wow. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. It's amazing. We're going to have to talk later.
What was the award?
What was the award? It was just a recognition, right, of best cities to visit in 2026 globally,
Right.
correct? And that was the only city in the United States, correct? Amazing. So there's a lot going on. And tonight we thought, well, here's another good opportunity for us to talk about a brand. And it's a brand that you cannot necessarily put your finger on, and it's always changing, and that is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has had so many different brands, right? The City of Bridges, the City of Champions, the Steel City. I mean, you name it, there are a bunch of them. So it's always changing and always evolving, and we thought, let's create an inclusive opportunity to have a discussion. And that's what tonight is. It's a conversation. We've got amazing panelists that are up here. And I want to talk about them in a second. You see who they are, and we're going to do something a little different. But I do want to say this first. We have great representation on this panel from academia, nonprofit, the corporate community, energy, media, civic leadership, and a heritage organization. I mean, that's awesome. So I want to give a big shout out to all the panelists for being here tonight, for dedicating your time to, I think, what could be a very cool conversation. And so instead of going through and asking each of the panelists who they are and what they do and what their role is, because you can see it, of course you can say it and share it, but I also wanted to start by a question, each of the panelists, and this will get us rolling. And so here's the first question. How would you describe the character of Pittsburgh today? And what is your kind of connection to Pittsburgh? Can I start with you, Mary? Okay, all right. We're going to start with Mary Murrin.
So I've refreshed my whole perspective on Pittsburgh. I went to school in the East End, went away to college, was never coming back, met a guy, came back right away, and didn't leave until I was in my early 50s when my kids were launched in Murrin, and I was transferred with Chevron to Houston. I was supposed to be there for 3 years, And everything was sold to EQT after I got there, and I was there for 7 years. And the answer to the question is, it's not what we are, it's who we are. I think our brand is more who than what. And I thought that everybody loved the town we came from as much as I did. I didn't think it was all that special, I just knew it was important to me. And then I got to Texas, and Houston was great, but I would pass colleagues from Chevron who had been transferred to Moon Township from Kazakhstan.
Moon.
And California, and they said to their partners, oh, we're going to Moon. I would pass them in the hall and they said, oh, we would go back in a second. So, but they talked about who we were and the feeling of the people. So that's a long answer.
Nice. Okay, Matt.
Hi there. Yeah, my connection to Pittsburgh, I'm a transplant. I grew up in the Poconos and I moved out here to undergrad at Pitt. And I was very, very lucky and very fortunate that I was able to stay here. And since then, I've never once thought about leaving. I've worked in local government in some form or another for the last 11 years. I think the character of Pittsburgh is similarly, like you said, it's more about the who than the what, and I think it's filled with people who are ready. I think that Pittsburgh is confronting a ton of challenges, as it has in the past, as it has throughout generations, different iterations, but there's never really been a loss of that scrappiness, that eagerness and that hunger to somehow tackle those issues. I don't think that the town really ever shies away from that. People might have different ideas about how to tackle and deal with those challenges, but there's never been anyone just willing to give up on the town and say, I'm calling it quits, that's it, I'm severing my ties here. And I think that's really, really endearing, and it's a sign not just of the confidence of the people who are from here, but the people that do come here and that choose to stay.
Thank you, Matt. I also forgot to mention that the panelists represent natives, non-natives, transplants, boomerangers, right? I think we've got it all up here, right? We all know what boomeranger is, correct? How many boomerangers do we have in the audience? Myself included. Yeah, check that out. All right, Tracy, you go.
So I am a transplant and a boomerang. So I came here when I was 16, when everyone else was leaving. And I didn't really even know that, but I thought Pittsburgh was cool from the start. I came from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is also kind of a little similar to Pittsburgh. It has the heritage thing going, and it too has reinvented itself. And then I left town, went to Los Angeles for 5 years, and returned, and still thought Pittsburgh was really cool, even though Pittsburgh by then was really kind of down in its luck. But I think Pittsburgh is many things. That's why I think it's very difficult to brand. I think it's complicated. It's got so much going on. It's a city. One of the things I love about the city, it's small enough that you can really make your mark here, but it's big enough that it's culturally diverse. It's got a lot of good technology. There's lots of advances in AI. There's lots of things going on. And it's got some of the best geography in the country, I think, with the hills and the rivers, and the tree canopy, I think, is the densest of any city in the country, which I love, the rivers and all that. So I think Pittsburgh's a combination of many things, and that's why it works so well.
Cool, thank you. I also wanted to mention something about Tracy, because you may not know this and you can't see it up above her, but she started 2 digital media companies. Pop City Media? Or was it just Pop City? Pop City?
It was Pop City. It was the first online publication.
Yeah. Who's heard of Pop City? You guys remember this? Whoa, check that out. And also Pittsburgh's Next.
Close.
NEXTpittsburgh.
NEXTpittsburgh.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll give you
That's
full
not gonna get me in
credit.
trouble, is it? So you've written a lot about Pittsburgh over the years. Thank you. Kendra.
Okay, this is what I would say when I lived in New York. I was born in Youngstown, raised in Pittsburgh, but made in Brooklyn. And so that's my story. I spent most of my childhood in Pittsburgh, went to Pittsburgh Public Schools K-12, proud PPS graduate, but I left here and to go to New York for college and said I was never coming back. So for me, Pittsburgh is resilient, it's creative, but it's unfinished. And I mean that not necessarily just in a negative way. When I did come back about 11-ish years ago, what I liked about it is I felt like Pittsburgh was evolving into a world-class city that was rediscovering itself and not just trying to be some other city like New York like or Boston like. And I think the way we can continue to lean into that and grow in our possibility is to continue to embrace other ways of knowing and being here, and not focus on culture literacy. We have some of the best cultural assets in the world here, but also culture, big C. And I think that's where our unfinished business is here. But I'm happy to be home, I'm happy to be here.
Like that, unfinished business. We're going to talk more about that. Christine, how about you?
Stuff. It's great to be with you all. So I claim the title lifelong Pittsburgher, but I wasn't born here, and so my whole life I've sort of wondered, like, can I really claim that title? I don't have multiple generations of family here, but my family came here in the late 80s for a job opportunity that my dad was pursuing with the coal industry. He sold equipment into the underground mines, and now a generation later, I work as part of the executive team at Duquesne Light Company that has the vision of a clean energy future for all. So you can imagine the dinner time conversations at my house about the funds that helped to put me through college versus the funds that are going to pay for my retirement. And to me, that is a big sort of piece of the Pittsburgh story, is that period of transition. And when I think about the character of the city today, part of the reason I really wanted to participate with this panel was to search for answers myself, because it is impossible to define paradox, and that's how I would really name the city's character in this present moment. It is big city assets with small town heart. It is very proud and very, very grounded at the same time. It's East Coast and Midwest. It is all these things that are sort of impossible to reconcile, and if you're thinking about how to create a brand, there's a lack of clarity there, and we know that branding requires some level of clarity. So I'm looking forward to the responses from my fellow panelists tonight, maybe some participation from the audience as we look for answers together.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have to acknowledge the fact that there are loud people in the audience. We do have to acknowledge that people are talking about this, right? It's not just us, and certainly it is not easy, but you probably all participated in certain civic organizations that have attempted to brand Pittsburgh. There are some that are happening right now relative to the NFL draft, but just wanted to acknowledge that this is not easy. It's hard to do. Lots of people are thinking about it, and this is, again, just another conversation around the brand of Pittsburgh. Don, how about you?
I'm a cliche. I'm an Italian from Brooklyn, New York, whose father failed to pay the dues to the Italian Social Club one year, and the next thing I know, we moved to Florida. Tell me, I woke up in New York. I went to bed in New York, I woke up in Florida, and I was like, damn, it got hot. And I grew up there, went to college there, but then I wanted a graduate degree in existential phenomenological psychology. And there was this place called Duquesne that had it. And so I came up to Duquesne, and it blew my mind. I was like, Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh? This town is amazing. I mean, it reminded me of the New York my parents used to talk about, my grandparents used to talk about. I mean, I lived on Mount Washington. I had an Italian landlord who said, this is your washing machine. It was a Ringer washing machine. I had to call my grandmother going, how do you work this thing? You know, what happens if your hand slips in there? And I never left. And then I realized I wanted to go back to the theater, because the theater is what I loved. And I was trying to date this ballerina up on Mount Washington. And she said, why did you go to Carnegie Mellon? And I said, what's Carnegie Mellon? And she said, oh, it's the oldest school of drama in the country. And I said, where is it? And she went, over there. And then I realized that this town has got so much going for it. And like Brooklyn, it gets a bad rap. And what I've realized 50 years later, I've been in here 50 years, is that Pittsburgh is anything you want it to be. For all the blue collar, for all the white collar, for all the high tech, it's whatever you want it to be. I'm currently teaching courses on the future metaverse. And where the metaverse, you become an avatar. And I'm realizing the avatar is whatever you want to make the avatar to be. That's Pittsburgh. If I want to dress up as a pirate, go to the pirate game, fine. If I want to be super cool and be hip, I can do that. Pittsburgh allows you to do and be anything you want it to be. And when you marry a Yinzer, you're stuck. Okay? So I love it. And one last thing. When I was running the Entertainment Technology Center, I had campuses all over the world. And I used to tell my students, you have 4 semesters, study on 4 continents. I'll actually use your tuition to pay you to go there. And then people would come back going, Don, what's your favorite city? And I would blow them away and I'd go, Pittsburgh. And they go, what's your second favorite city? And I'd go, Erie. And they go, what's your third favorite city? And I'd go, Singapore. That's how much I love this place.
And Don, 50 years? I mean, come on, high kicks for you, buddy. That's pretty amazing. All right, let's talk about brand. Let's talk about branding a city. You know, it's something that you cannot, as I said earlier, you can't touch it. It's tricky. You can't just redesign a logo, right? So in the context of like a civic context, what is a brand? What does it mean in a civic context? Again, it's not like a label on the back of your pants. How would we go about framing a civic brand? I don't need to go down the road again, each one of you, but just what are you feeling, sensing? Go.
I'll jump in, because you mentioned the Steelers and the Steeler logo. So in my new position as Rivers of Steel, did you know that the 3 diamonds, the 3-colored diamonds for the Steelers, the United Steelworkers logo, represent iron ore, coke, and limestone? And so I do feel that our brand is very focused on what came out of the ground and what was under our feet that allowed us to commercialize oil, you know, not us, but 30, 40 miles north, coal, nuclear energy, I mean, just the amazing creation of that. And the other thing that is important about that is, the first few weeks in the job, somebody referred to Pittsburgh, said, do you know that Pittsburgh was the Silicon Valley of the United States in the early 19th century? And I realized we think of everything that was under the ground as manufacturing industry. It was tech. It was tech. We've always been innovative. Innovation and hard work made us who we are. So I'm not opposed to sticking with the Steelers logo to brand us. And I've actually had people say, well, we need to get over the whole steel thing and stop calling ourselves the Steel City. I think the steel represents, the industry represents our culture, and again, the innovation, but also the hard work. So.
I like that. Okay, who else? What does brand mean in a civic context?
I would say, I'm not a brand expert of all the folks in this room, but I would say for me, what differentiates a brand in the civic context is not just what we want to know about the place, but what we want people to experience and feel in the place. Like when we say Pittsburgh, we say, oh, the steel town, the city of bridges. When we say New York, we say the city that never sleeps. When we say Austin, keep Austin weird. So like, how you want people to feel the city or that space in their bones, not just what you want them to know about it, right? It's not just like what we're known for, but what you feel when you go there. And that, for me, that's what brand is for a city that we're missing. And we have so much to choose from, we just gotta figure out what that is.
Yeah.
I think Don might have figured it out.
Let me chime in along those lines. Do you remember when the motto of the United States was "E pluribus unum," out of many, one? And when you think about this town, the only city where every sports team wears the colors of the flag. I mean, as a native New Yorker, the Jets are green and white. The hell has that got to do with the city, right? The Giants, they're blue and white. The Yankees are navy blue. Pittsburgh, we all identify with the city. So even though it can be anything you want it to be, it's like the flag actually takes on a corporeal presence when we're dressed in our black and gold. And I just think that's incredible. I mean, you know, I have season tickets to the Pirates, okay? So quite clearly I'm a masochist. But I dress up as a pirate at those games and give out baseball cards because that's what the sport means to me. But, you know, at Point Park now, there's an internal debate. We're branding ourselves as the downtown city. Shouldn't our colors be black and gold? And of course, it's like, no, it's green. It's green. And I'm like, no, think about it, think about it. So, again, it's a city of incredible diversity, and yet we are united by the colors of our flag. I think that's pretty darn cool.
Oh, that's interesting. So colors, feeling, the materials or the substance that make up the city. Anything else?
Steve, something that comes to my mind when we think about a brand in a civic sense is like, I have a question before the question, which is why in the first place? Like, what do we need? What is the purpose of having the brand? Is it something that we want people who are here to know and feel and have a sense of consistency and belonging about? Or are we trying to market ourselves to the outside world and bring more people here? Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish by having a brand in a civic sense in the first place is a question that I've been sort of rolling around in my mind.
Yeah, I would ask the same. Is it, you know, trying to identify ourselves? Because I think the challenges, like what Don said about sports, Pittsburgh's a sports town. And I love that about Pittsburgh. I love the black and gold and all that it represents. But some people don't like sports. And some people don't like kayaking in the rivers, or paddleboarding in the rivers, or being on the river or the trails, or being very active. So there has to be buy-in behind it. And I was having this conversation, and we were talking about Cleveland. And I know Cleveland arouses strong feelings in people here, but I always thought Cleveland, the perfect branding for Cleveland would be Cleveland Rocks, because they have the great rock and roll Hall of Fame. Well, it turns out that used to be their slogan, Cleveland Rocks. But they stopped it, and it was back in 2016 because people didn't buy it. People from the outside were saying, Cleveland doesn't rock. What are you talking about, you know? And people on the inside Cleveland were saying, well, some of us like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but not everybody does. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of trying to come up with a single identity in a city that represents so much.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so before we get there, Matt, were you going to say something?
Oh, yeah, sort of just another comment on the ambiguity of the brand. And I think one way to look at it too is less as a static thing and more of almost as like a connected tissue. So a lot of times when people are doing urban planning or planning out buildings, they measure the productive use of that building in terms of door swings and how to do like radar activation nearby. When you walk into that building, you have that one door swing, what are you doing in that building? What does that space do for you as the user? When you exit it, what activation nearby? Is there a park nearby? Is there a restaurant nearby, a shop nearby? And I think that sort of when you think of a city's brand, you kind of think of it the same way. When someone is coming here for the first time, and they go, what is this city showing them? What is that thing that they can just know? They don't have to read about it, but whether it's through the zeitgeist or something else, whether they know that we have this astounding arts and cultural scene. Do they know that we have a relatively low cost of living compared to peer cities and things like that? But by the same token, when people exit, when they have that door swing out, what is the impression that Pittsburgh has left on them? What is the takeaway when they go elsewhere? Say, oh, I used to live in Pittsburgh, now I'm elsewhere for college, or I was there on a business trip. What is my takeaway? So I think the brand is that connective tissue that lets other people fill in the gaps within that ambiguity. It's hard to describe, it's hard to say, and that may sound like a bit of a cop-out, but it is that when you come in, when you come out, what is hitting you and what are you able to stash with you and take away?
So almost like, again, the physical, tangible locality. Okay, that's interesting. Let me touch on something Tracy said about, another question to the panelists. Who owns the brand? Is it a civic institution? Is it a sports team? Who owns it? this doesn't have to be an existential philosophical question, but just your perspective. We'll start with you, Tracy.
Well, I hate to keep ringing this bell, but it really depends on the audience. So Matt, who's with Pittsburgh Foundation right there, he's director of comms and I'm on the board. I asked Ted about Pittsburgh's brand. He used to work for the Allegheny Conference. So he was talking about the Allegheny Conference and their branding over the years. I think it's very specific. I think the Allegheny Conference had their brand, maybe the business district had theirs, but others, I mean, not so much.
I don't think anybody owns the brand except the people. And by that I mean, who travels better than a Steeler fan, right? Every city you go to, even at the Charger gate, there was like as much black and gold, and that wasn't us telling them to do that. That was people feeling it. Before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of speaking among other Rust Belt cities that wanted to know, how has Pittsburgh done it? Done what? Basically reinvented itself. And I would say to them, and this brings up something Kendra talked about when she mentioned keep Austin weird. This is one weird-ass city. And I would go there saying, you know, we've got so much eccentricity in this town that you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's everything from the chairs on the parking spots to the Fort Pitt Bridge. You know, left lane wants to go right, right lane wants to go left. You got 300 yards, make it happen. And all of those things that are, when the BBC said the Pittsburgh accent was the ugliest accent in America, and I said, we were proud of that. I mean, it was like, whatever you do, don't water down the accent. I mean, keep the people in Brookline talking like that. I mean, because Andy Warhol, yes, Andy Warhol, his family sells junk. They've got a junk dealership on the north side. I love taking my friends from New York going, you want to know where he came from? He came from the junk dealer. This is fabulous. We've got so much eccentricity in this town that you find in the Strip District on some plates and some t-shirts and all that. But hell, I would say promote it galore.
With the parking chair.
Huh?
The parking chair.
Yeah, the parking chair.
I agree. We, the people, own the brand. I'm thinking in a practical sense, though, you know, back to the Allegheny Conference or the city of Pittsburgh, like, has anybody ever undertaken something to define the brand in more than the sense of a campaign? So I think we're all very familiar with a lot of the campaigns that have been out there, Pittsburgh Mighty and Beautiful, or Next is Now, and really awesome initiatives that served a very specific purpose, whether it was economic development or talent attraction or, you know, whatever it was. But I don't know if any of these entities who have a very practical role to play in possibly defining the brand of Pittsburgh have done so. They'll certainly have to take, how many neighborhoods are in the city? It's 91. 90
plus.
90.
So it's like, there's also this other element of like, how do you take 90 distinct identities and distill it into something that we can all agree upon?
You know what comes closest, and Steve, you mentioned it, the airport. I mean, Christine apparently she has done amazing work with that airport. And coming back from New York yesterday, it's still not open yet, but you're like walking around going, you know what? This feels pretty cool here. There's Primanti's. I mean, Primanti's is known all over the world. I mean, one of my assistants at Point Park, her family's from the Netherlands. And she's like, my father's coming in, but he said he's going to be here 4 days and we're having dinner at Primanti's all 4 nights. I'm like, what is he on a cholesterol kick? I mean, does his cardiologist know? But that's Pittsburgh to them. So I think the airport is probably as close as we get to anyone promoting the many faces of the burg.
Yeah. Let's build on that for a second, because I want to talk about the beautiful tension that Pittsburgh has. And that's our legacy versus our future. Silicon versus steel, steel versus silicon, whichever one came first. How do we bundle that all together? Is it possible to honor our heritage, but also look forward? I'm going to start with you, Mary, because you're kind of right at the heart of all of this, right?
Yes, and I actually learned that the word heritage means going forward. I didn't know that. History is the past, heritage is what you carry forward. That was news to me. I think some of the tension is that we know how amazing this city is. And you don't have to be from here, but if you call this home, you've adopted this, you get it. We know how cool it is. I don't think we think other people know how cool it is or would care. I think when I describe my experience and loving it here, but really not knowing how special it was, I hear often from people visiting the Carey Furnaces that we don't do a good enough job of promoting how amazing an old mill site is, because we kind of take it for granted. We think it's amazing, but do we think anybody else is going to think it's amazing? So I think part of it is sort of, and it's not because we're humble, it's because we think we live in a bit of a bubble maybe there's some safety around it that feels good, but we don't really truly believe that anybody else will think we're as cool as we know we are.
I want to piggyback off that. I think that bubble of safety is a really, really good point. I'll use a draft as an example. I truly don't want to sound like a hater, but like, do we really need it to be another commercial with Terry Bradshaw and pierogi and an old glass furnace? That's just great. We love that. The world knows us by that, but there has to be a time and place where we also show what we've done since and what we have now. We should be on those big draft commercials when they pan across the city. Do we need a grainy photo of the old coke works down in Hazelwood, or can we show our beautiful trails, our beautiful rivers? Can it show places like the South Hills and neighborhoods like Brookline, Beechview, where there are immigrants, new citizens coming here, opening businesses, living their dreams, becoming this deep neighborhood connections? That's stuff that I think sometimes we are a bit more squeamish about sharing because it's less well known. We don't feel the confidence we can brag about that. We absolutely can. We absolutely should. I think nostalgia is a beautiful thing. It's very comforting, and it does help us connect with other people. But we can't let that be the only arrow in our quiver. We have to show more than that.
Tracy, are we free from our past? And when I think about the brand?
I think we should be promoting it more. I think, remember the 1662 design zone?
A strip district, right?
That was a design community trying to brand, it was from Lawrenceville through the strip.
16th Street to 62nd
Yeah.
Bridge.
Yeah. I've often thought there should be more, like something like that, but more broad-based in Pittsburgh, based on heritage. Include the Carey Furnaces, include the strip district, and include Hazelwood Green, and all the stuff they're doing there. I don't think a lot of people know, Hazelwood Green or have been there yet. Or else the Pittsburgh Glass Center. I mean, that is based on, it's a very unique concept. It's unique in this country. It's a real gem in the city. I have so many people who haven't been there. It would be neat to designate these places and have some kind of trail and promote it. We don't do anything like that.
Would agree. Any other thoughts, perspectives about this? I think it's a beautiful tension that we should leverage. Any other thoughts about that?
Think about the tension of past and future in terms of a balancing beam on a fulcrum. So not a balancing beam. What do you call that thing? Just a beam on a fulcrum, and you got different rocks, and one of the rocks that's sort of holding us more in the past and might be a barrier to achieving that perfect balance of honor and heritage is the fact that, I'm not sure we always want to move into the future. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the things that we hold near and dear about our culture in the city depend on not too many people moving here. God forbid it affect our housing affordability, or do we have the infrastructure to account for that, or does too much development take away from economic development, take away from the charm of certain aspects that we love about our neighborhoods? So I don't know. It just seems to me that there might be a rock there that's kind of keeping us on our heels as opposed to achieving that optimum balance between past and future.
It sounds like we're going to dig at that rock a little bit. Don?
As someone who's dealing with students constantly, I love history. They are a generation that seems to be immune to history. And so for me, the strip district is the old strip district. For them, it's the terminal that's been revised, right? And the great thing about Pittsburgh is they coexist, right? They coexist. I mean, Woolies is Woolies for me, all right? Penn Mac, all right? I'll go with the Penn Mac just to inhale, okay? I mean, it's it. On the other hand, though, what's wrong with the terminal market, right? You go to the Asian place, you know, and you're like, well, this is phenomenal. This is, I would say, for the young people, it's their version of Pittsburgh. And for those of us who are integrated in terms of history and all that, it's like what's happening in the Strip District, right? A warehouse that's empty is coming down and a new apartment building's going up. You know what? I'll take the apartment building. I mean, there's people going to be moving in there. Leave me a few warehouses, okay? But other than that, I think that we've got so many different levels of Pittsburgh, people living here, that we've got to acknowledge that high-tech, modern, is very, very cool and attractive. If I'm trying to convince my students to stay here, for the most part, I'm promoting that. I'm promoting the high-tech, I'm promoting the affordability. Trust me, my daughter just bought a house in Chicago. I got to sell a kidney to even get close to this. So there's many different Pittsburghs.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Can I add to that first?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think we talk a lot about places, landmarks, but I think we've missed the embodied piece that I talked about earlier and the way we make things feel. A lot of the young people who come here, and I work with a lot, I used to teach in Point Park, and now I work at Duolingo with a lot of young people, is like there's places to go, but there's a missing people connection. I think like the old ladies that used to make the pierogies together in the church basement, and then also the Striptic, we had the Rosebud, we had Metropole. There's no nightlife anymore. Like the third spaces where people actually had connection and not just bought things or sat on their computer and drank coffee together. I think the missing piece, I think we can have both. I think we can have the history and the heritage, but I think the missing piece of it is like how our ways of being together in those places. Because it's great that we have all these places, but if you come here new and you're lonely, or if you're from here and you're trying to figure out how you continue to build community with the old and new and not feel intimidated by the new, you have to draw those connection points. We can build beautiful buildings that look like the apartments, you know, in Capitol Heights in DC or in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn, but where are those places that people can actually connect? And I think that's the missing component, but I think we can have both if we can figure out how to connect those two dots. I feel like my generation, people forget, Gen X, kind of embodies that. Like I'm the quintessential boomerang Gen Xer, went to PPS. I know old school Pittsburgh, but I also am a woman of the world. And I feel like, you know, we're being overlooked, and I feel like there's something that we can bring to the conversation.
Yeah, cool. Okay, because I think we all talked about this last week, of the lens that different generations have in Pittsburgh on the brand of Pittsburgh. What do we think about that? Because I hate to say this, but we don't have representation from the college community on the panel. But what do they think? Like, are we acknowledging that? Do we know that is their perspective completely different than maybe all of us that are
Very much
older,
so.
myself included? Go for it.
From my
Yeah.
personal
Go for
experience, when I went away to school in Rhode Island for college after older days, and a lot of my friends were from LA, New York, and these cool places, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. My kids, I have 3 sons in their 30s. They all went away. So far, 2 of them have come back. But they loved saying they were from Pittsburgh when you know, they thought Pittsburgh was cool, and they were proud of being from Pittsburgh. So I think that's a different change. But I do understand what you're saying, Kendra, because do they feel like they have the power to create close communities here? I hope so. I wonder how much of that is social media and all the, you know, COVID and all the things that have isolated people. But if they love being from here in a way that we didn't talk about, what's their impact going to be? Are they going to be able to change the culture in a way that gives them, empowers them and gives them the desire to stay because they feel having an impact, and I don't know that.
Okay.
No, I'll
chime in. Despite the bald head, I'm only 32, so I might be on the younger side. But I would say in terms of Pittsburgh's brand and young folks, especially college-age folks, it's up to people in all sectors of Pittsburgh, whether it's government, the corporate community, nonprofit, education. We do have to turn around and look ourselves in the mirror and say, what are we doing for these people that are 22, 21 coming out of college? I mean, we have a very intense concentration of institutions of higher education here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County in this region, and we know that the majority of those graduates go on to get jobs, find somewhere to live. The problem is most of them are doing that in other cities, and that does bring into that tension of, are we giving them, even at this young, early stage in their life, a chance to make their imprint, make their mark? I mean, there's stuff where there's very high correlation between where you get an internship, for example, and where you ultimately wind up working. So if you go to one of the schools in Pittsburgh, you get an internship in New York City, Boston, DC, or something like that, that's really gonna shift your likelihood of getting a job, or where your job will be at college. And if you're 21, 22, you're gonna go where you can get a job. It's pretty far and immediate concern to you. So I think the question then is, what does leadership in Pittsburgh do, whether it's the corporate community, whether it's philanthropy? How do we let young people play that active role in shaping Pittsburgh? They should have a say in that way too. We don't want to throw away everything that's old, and we definitely don't do that by us. How do we give them that buy-in so that this place isn't just a transient stop on a journey to ultimately end up in Denver or Miami instead?
Yeah, that makes sense. Would you guys all agree? Make sense? Let me ask a question about inside-out perspectives. I know you all travel quite a bit outside the region. If you were to ask somebody from New York, Donnie, you were just there, not your brother, but if you were to ask somebody from New York or somebody from San Francisco or London, when they think of Pittsburgh, what comes to mind? Is it the same story that we are telling ourselves, or is it different?
It depends on who you're talking to. In March of 2012, I had established a relationship between the Entertainment Technology Center and the University of Salford in the UK. And they called me up and they said, Don, what are you doing the end of this month? We're having the royal opening and we would like you to be there. And I was like, me? Have you checked with the FBI? So I go there and I'm in the receiving line and Prince Philip shows up. And they go, Your Royal Highness, this is Dr. Donald Marinelli from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And Prince Philip goes, Pittsburgh? How did you get over here? And I said, well, sir, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And he goes, Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh is very much like Manchester, isn't it? And I said, yes, sir, that's why I feel right at home. And he went, whoa, and walked off.
Is this a true story?
It's a true story. It's the truth. We're not going to make it up.
I don't know.
And I turned to the Aussie next to me, and I said, that's the nicest 91-year-old drunk I have ever met. I mean, if I had a match, we'd have a flamethrower going on. But no, for him, Pittsburgh was Manchester, which of course was the Industrial Revolution place. And meanwhile, what was going on was an exhibit on radio, and the first radio station in the UK was in Manchester, and what did they have? They were getting the signals from KDKA in Pittsburgh. So from that thing, I was like, folks, this is our radio station, okay? What you're hailing here in the UK came from the Burgh, via Marconi, but it came from the Burgh. So that's, to that generation, we were Manchester and what have you. But let me tell you, every time my friends from New York come here, they're like, if I had to do things over again, I'd move to Pittsburgh. It's kind of like New York, but you can get around. So, I mean, the reputation the Burgh's got, I think, is quite good.
Yeah, from the outside.
From the outside,
Okay.
yes.
I think it's mostly sports related. So my boomerang story is that after finishing my undergraduate at University of Pittsburgh, I moved as an expat to Mexico, to the northern part of the country in Monterrey. And for those of you who don't know, Mexicans are nuts about the Steelers. And part of that history is that the NFL started being broadcast in that country in the 1970s. And so at that time, the kings of the league were the Steelers and the Cowboys. And so that country is basically 50-50 split in terms of the fan base. So in Monterey, wherever I went, there were Steelers bars everywhere. And when people found out I was from Pittsburgh, I was like a celebrity, but not because they knew anything about the city or really cared much about the city other than that the Steelers played there. So that's been my experience in most of the places where I've traveled. I think there's a stat, you'll have to fact check me, but it's like 80% of people who have name recognition for Pittsburgh outside of the country is all about the Steelers.
Can I add some data around that? When I was at Chevron, we had a partnership with the NFL and the Steelers. Interesting data. The average age, got this data 10 years ago, of a NFL fan was 45 to 70. Data show if you were raised in a city where you had a good team and you move, you take your loyalty to your team. If you were raised in a city where it wasn't that great, you move away and the team's better, you adopt that. Pittsburgh was a perfect storm. We were killing it in the 70s, and then the Steel industry tanked, and people left for a diaspora, and that is why Steeler Nation is Steeler Nation, because so many people left with this deep love of Pittsburgh, and there's the Steelers, and there's no other NFL team that rivals that because of that sad dichotomy.
So we were just spreading our love across the world?
And then raising your children, loving your grandchildren, and
I guess that love's gonna come back at some point. Okay, what else? Anything else from outside, kind of outside perspective? Does it match our inside perspective?
I'll say when I was an undergrad, people from like Queens, New York, and places like that, when I said I was from Pittsburgh, they said, "Is that in Philly?"
Or people think they're an hour apart, Pittsburgh and Philly. Because when I've told people I'm from Pittsburgh and they ask if I go to Philly often, I was like, why would you say that? Because they're so close. I actually don't think the outside-in perspective is as good as some of the other people on the panel, but I think it's getting better. And that's why I think the articles like the National Geographic list, and this stuff's really helpful. I've made People magazine, I got an alert on my phone today that the list made People, but People magazine took the story and they said, this one city that made the list, the National Geographic list, will surprise you. And of course, they didn't name the city, but when you clicked in, it was mostly about Pittsburgh. So that kind of stuff is really great. We've had really good publicity like that the last 10, 15 years. But,
Sometimes it takes.
so I think it's changing, but I think it could be better.
Sometimes it takes an outside perspective for us to believe ourselves, right?
Although when my son was in college in Philly, he called me one day and he said, "Mom, when I say I'm from Pittsburgh, other students say, oh, Pittsburgh's so cool." And that was a while ago. But he went to school in Philadelphia and they know Pittsburgh better. I lived in Los Angeles. I can tell you, Pittsburgh's off the map for most of those people. They don't even have, nothing comes to mind when they think of Pittsburgh, including the Steelers, because they're not in football.
But there's also Pittsburgh in the Bay, so if you say
That's
Pittsburgh in
right.
California,
That
it's
would-
like the Bay.
yeah.
Is it Pittsburgh, Kansas, which I've driven through before? Okay, question to the audience. How many of you are native, born and raised here? So that's what, probably 15%? Okay, and then the rest of you came here? Transplant? From somewhere else? Get out, raise your hand. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Does someone want to share a story about why they moved to Pittsburgh? Yeah, go ahead. You can just talk about it.
Sure. I ironically came here to go to art school. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I joke that I did not move here for sports. The irony is I've worked with people in sports. But that is not why I love Pittsburgh. And respectfully, I think there's an incredible amount of industries that have been overlooked in this conversation. I have had the pleasure of being a historical storyteller for anywhere from U.S. Steel to the Draco Museum. I've done work with the Carnegie Museum, and I think we are, and I'm a two-time entrepreneur, I'll say that too. I just closed a store in Lawrenceville on Butler Street, And I think one of the things that absolutely made me fall in love with Pittsburgh was the mom and pop nature of it. And that is a drastically dying industry in the United States right now, especially when it comes to brick and mortar stores. And having been traveling for the summer, I think that Pittsburgh still has a unique opportunity to reinvest how we approach what our small business districts look like, because they are dying around the country, and we still have a stronghold on it if we don't let it go too far. One of my absolute favorite things about Pittsburgh was when I moved here and came here to go to art school, I stayed and I worked in a design firm where there was a lot of European diversity, Venezuelans, Japanese. I got a unique perspective of Pittsburgh in that degree, and I had to learn the hard way that diversity does not actually really exist here. There's a lot that we still need to keep working on, but I think like there's no other city I could have ever moved to and started 2 businesses. And right now I'm struggling in that space, but I'm kind of hopeful, and I kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because there's some strong movement Pittsburgh has on me. To want to say that there's so many industries. Like my favorite story right now that like nobody's really talking about, and I just saw a new Grapevine down at the Fort Pitt Block House, is the conversation about how George Washington and the Indians defeated the French to like declare democracy here in Pittsburgh. And music legacy here is unbelievable. The theater district in East Liberty is unbelievable. There are so many college students that I have the pleasure of giving itineraries of ways to connect to the city, having a store owner, or even just visitors that make me excited to talk about the nuances of the care that Pittsburghers have. And to me, like the heart of the people that live here is kind of part of the brand of who we are.
Wow, thank you for sharing. You've learned a lot since you've been here. Does anybody want to respond to what we just heard? Oh, yeah.
So I am lifelong Pittsburgher. I'm actually 7 generations from the Ormsby family, if anybody knows that. They fought in the French Canadian War, so I'm very familiar with Fort Pitt Block House. And I love it. You know, I've been through college and everything. My son's off to college now, and you know, he chose Penn State because he's like, I don't want to, you know, I still want to stay in Pennsylvania, and I want my job to be in Pittsburgh. I don't want to go, you know, he looked at MIT and all that, and I said, well, remember, you go away to school, that's where you're going to get your internships. And he's like, I want to stay and, you know, celebrate our history and move forward, so.
Thank you. Almost in a response to what we just heard, what parts of the brand of Pittsburgh do you think need to be rewritten? And how important is storytelling to our brand?
I think the diversity piece. Houston is the most diverse city in the United States, and it was incredible. And it's largely, because of the oil and gas industry that they're always bringing people in from Angola and Nigeria and Kazakhstan and South America. But it was, and it made me, I had always known that basically our diversity, especially around African Americans, is the Great Migration, and we haven't done much since. Growing up, I didn't know any Hispanics or Latinos here. I think it's changing, actually. I think universities, Duolingo's doing a great job of sort of celebrating the opportunities of diversity, but I think diversity is a big thing, age-wise and culturally, that we need to work on. And one of the opportunities I'm hearing so much about is climate migration, where over time, people are going to come in from the coasts to places with water and green space and few natural disasters, and that's an incredible opportunity to bring in diversity from the coasts of the country. But, and this isn't, there's an article written a couple months ago on this, but we gotta be prepared for it. We can't wait till people start to come and then, oh, we should build some housing, we should get the infrastructure. We gotta do that now and get ready for it and then welcome that diversity.
Have a plan. Okay, who else? Let's hear about what else needs to be rewritten about our brand right now.
I just wanted to add on to the diversity piece. I mean, let's be honest. I can't go into any city and be in a room talking about a brand and have this lack of diversity in the room. like Pittsburgh is a very unique city in that regard, as a city. So we actually have diversity. I think we can, before we invite others to come in, to embrace the diversity that we have a little bit more. And that's what I said about other ways of knowing and being. It's like, we have representation per se, right? There are people at different tables at all levels of government, corporate, public, private, obviously, the nonprofit sector, which is where we kind of, I think, really over-index and really shine as a city. Representation is not enough. We have to embrace other ways of knowing and being. What that means is like just allowing other ways to think about when people say we embody Pittsburgh, you don't have one viewpoint of what that is. And I think we can get there. I think it's better than it was when I was younger. Like I said, I thought I'd never come back here. And maybe it's just because I have had the fortune of like navigating this landscape of being from the South Hills. I grew up in Banksville, but I've lived, lived in Brooklyn. I've always felt comfortable with my skin everywhere I am. But I think creating that space so that people who are here feel like Pittsburgh belongs to you too, no matter who you are, which of the 90 neighborhoods you're from. And I think that will help us, because outsiders can sense the tension when they come. But if they come here and say, oh, wait a minute, like, they got it going on here. There's 90 neighborhoods, but like somehow like it makes sense and it works. That's what attracts people to come.
Is the tension between the 90 neighborhoods, or is the tension between our past and our future?
It's both and. There's certain people, it reminds me of New York. I knew people in Brooklyn who never went to Manhattan. I just didn't understand that. There are people who live in the South Hills who do not come down that hill unless it's like 3 Rivers Arts Festival. I'm from like real Appalachia, where when you drive up those hills in Beachview and you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it back.
That's true, and I can tell you even Rankin and Swissvale. Don't. I mean, they like each other up to a certain point, but then when it comes to sharing an objective, it's like, well, we got our side, and you got your side.
The geography definitely poses a challenge, but to the point of diversity, Pittsburgh is one of the least diverse cities in the country, and it has the lowest immigration rate of any metropolitan in the country. And we were making really good strides in that. In Caroline, we were doing until change in administration has really tanked that effort. So things are going to be tougher.
Don, were you gonna say something?
Yes, In fact, let's heat things up a bit. I'm a drama professor, all right? I was the associate head of drama at Carnegie Mellon for I know, just shocked. Like, I thought you were a neurosurgeon. And there is a fundamental shift in our demographic period. In terms of, remember, boomers, we used to be the largest group. Now we're not, okay? Because we're dying, right? And other generations, think about it. All the theaters in this town are now talking to each other because they're not getting audiences. And it's not because I don't want to cross the bridge, or I don't want to cross the river. It's because the theater is not offering something of value to them. I can say that because what did I do from drama? I went to computer science, started the Entertainment Technology Center with Randy Pausch from the last lecture. Okay, was my partner, because in the 90s I was like, folks, I went to drama. You don't want to hear this, but video games are going to eat our lunch unless we join with them. And they didn't want to hear anything about it. They were like, no, it's the theater. It's the theater. And I'm like, well, how come all of my students are playing video games? And I remember back then they were like, are you talking about Donkey Kong? And I'm like, first of all, when movies first started, they were clunky. When photography first started, it was clunky. I said, do you have any doubt that television is not an art form? Or that cinema is not an art form? Interactive digital media is going to win. It's won, okay? That's the generation. Now, we're starting to get there. Believe it or not, one of the second largest game company on the East Coast is Shell Games on Station Square, Jesse Shell from ETC. So, I mean, that's going to change. What are we going to do with the theaters? Like anything else, we're either going to swim together, join together, or we're going to die individually. So we have to recognize that things are changing there. As far as diversity goes, everything you say is true, except for food. I mean, when I first moved to Pittsburgh, if you ate out, you went to Tampolini's. You know, there were like 12 of them. Now, all of a sudden, Pittsburgh's being recognized as a foodie town. And suddenly I'm sitting with the wife going, "You want Cambodian tonight?" What the hell? When did that happen? So I mean,
Table Magazine came on this show, that's what happened.
yeah, no, but I mean, it's this thing where these changes are inevitable, and how do we deal with them? So I think that you start to slice the pie more. Are you interested in history? Are you interested in legacy? We've got that. Are you interested in the future? We're Roboberg, okay? If you're interested in, I remember telling the drama people, I know you don't want to hear about video games, but where do you think the computer programs are being written for those games? They're being written in that building over there, the School of Computer Science. Look, when they didn't want to hear about it, I said, well, I'll go over myself. I remember I knocked on the door, I said, is there any room in the School of Computer Science for a drama professor? And they were like, Don, we would love to have you. That's one of those cool things. Who would have expected it? I thought they were going to give me a math test. And instead they said, coming over here, you bring a background of storytelling, of drama, of character development, and maybe we'll start having good parties. So, I mean, it can happen, it can really happen.
Christine.
Yeah, I think there are two brand narratives that are maybe on the cusp of being rewritten, and I'm playing off some of your comments, which I thought were excellent. First, around Main Street businesses. There's an organization that I wanted to call everyone's attention to called Being Collaborative. It's run by a guy named Joel Bernstein, and he, I believe he's a native Pittsburgher, was a Wall Streeter for a while, came back and has been doing a lot of research about the generational shift. So it's not just purchasing trends or sort of cultural trends that are happening that present a threat to small businesses. It's the generational shift in ownership. And a lot of the owners of small businesses, particularly ones that are diverse-led, are retiring out and have no succession plan in place to either pass their business on to somebody else or sell it. And so Joel's doing a lot of work to create transition plans for these businesses to keep them alive in the communities that we're a part of. So check out Being Collaborative, and I agree with you. I think Pittsburgh has a really unique potential to be a powerhouse on the small business front. The other sort of brand narrative that I think is on the cusp of being rewritten is Pittsburgh's philanthropic scene. And Matt, you surely have a perspective here and would love to hear it from the Pittsburgh Foundation standpoint. But I do think Pittsburgh is known as a generous city, largely tied to large steel magnates and the Carnegie Free Library network across the country and these other things and the arts and culture that we have access to. But I think that network is expanding to include corporations, social impact programs, and other family foundations who are shaping Pittsburgh's culture in interesting ways, and it would be beneficial, I think, for the city to just galvanize its efforts in terms of where philanthropic dollars are going strategically for the city moving forward.
Okay, so Matt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Any perspective you want to share?
From philanthropy's perspective.
Yes.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with Pittsburgh having a legacy of philanthropic families. I also think, that sometimes offloads responsibility from corporations or other companies or even private individuals from sort of assuming that notion that we all own a brand or we all need to sort of pitch in and carry forward Pittsburgh's best interests. So I do think philanthropy definitely plays a role, but I think it's evolved over time. And there's a culture here in Pittsburgh that I think relies on it a little bit, where people might say philanthropy will take the baton, but it should be more of a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
You can only take it so far.
Yeah.
You guys agree?
Okay, so we're having a pretty serious conversation about the brand of Pittsburgh, which we should. But let me ask a question to the audience. If you could use one word to describe the brand of Pittsburgh, what would it be? One word, just shout it out.
Neighbor.
Yams.
Yams, unity, Okay, what was over here? Yams. I thought I said yams. Where are yams going? That wouldn't work, would it? It's my hand. Say it one more time. Ed and Ed.
Say 90 hyphen downtowns.
90 downtowns? Downtowns? Okay, what else? A word.
Possibility.
Evan? We'll come back to you. Next, who else?
Evolving.
Evolving, nice.
Surprising.
Surprising.
Opportunity.
Opportunity.
Possibility, which is the same page, same treatment.
Something else? One word. Come on.
Neighbor.
Neighbor, okay. With Mr. Rogers, right. Evan,
2 words, but unfulfilled potential.
unfulfilled potential.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because this has been largely a positive conversation. The pragmatic reality is that the city of Pittsburgh has gone from close to 700,000 people to 300,000 people. We have virtually no economic vitality in this region. And the reason why we don't have an immigrant population is because there aren't any jobs that anybody wants to come to. So, and places that are great, like Duolingo, attract tons of people. You probably have more resumes than you could ever imagine. I was at Free Markets. We hired 800 people. We had 12 to 20 people every single day coming in and interviewing. So there's an interest in being here, but there's not an interest if there aren't jobs. And so much of the framing of Pittsburgh is around a fixed mindset instead of a growth mindset. And until that changes, that's going to require a lot of what you said. We've got to stop relying on the foundation community to set the course for this region. It's a bad idea. It creates a culture of dependency on Big Brother to do things instead of doing what you've done, which is actually really the key to creating a vital region. So, sorry, I'm just venting with it because I really feel like there's a lot of stuff here, and it's impossible to create a brand for something when there's no common vision for what this region even could be.
Yeah, and everything you said is true. I agree with everything. Duolingo is like the #1 employer of international students. And they used to go straight to Carnegie Mellon, and they would hire all kinds of international students, keep them here in Pittsburgh. And now, they're hiring a lot of international students and putting them elsewhere, and not in Pittsburgh. So it's just not helping. But the job market, especially the entry-level job market, really needs to be improved here to keep the talent.
Yeah. To the question?
We talk about diversity.
George, come on out of here. This is George Potts from Fifth Influence.
Sorry for jumping from behind the column there. I just want to address the no jobs and universal diversity. Diversity is ethnicity, but diversity is also socioeconomic. The bricklayers have 40 apprenticeships available 3 times a year. They fill only 10 to 12 of them. The boilermakers, the steam fitters, welding, there is enormous job opportunity in our region.
That's a national issue.
It is, but it's something that we can address here. Why can we address it? What Mondami addressed in New York, affordability. Affordability is real compared to other markets. That's the truth. You can buy a home here, you can live within certain means. And I'd like the panel to talk about in regards to, we talked about ownership, one person, but there is responsibility. We have someone from the Pittsburgh Foundation here. I called them, when I was young, I called them the Council of Gray Hairs, Allegheny Conference, a bunch of now, like myself, bald, gray, white men. How do we reach common ground across the diversity that we have to attract more diversity to what I believe is an incredibly affordable, livable city for all ethnicities and all parts of the socioeconomic spectrum?
I'm going to go back to what Kendra said about giving people a place to interact, feel welcome. It's not that they're not welcome, people aren't welcome, but sort of intentionally gathering people in ways that I don't think we're doing right now. Again, back to the neighborhoods, you've got this line and this line. That's a cultural thing.
I mean,
Good.
to echo some of the stakes, I mean, the gentleman in the front, you're exactly right. Pittsburgh fails to grow, this city will. It's not gonna look good. If the city drops below 300,000 residents, that begins affecting federal funding formulas. Every local government in America right now is dealing with the problem of what they're gonna do post-COVID. Everyone thought commercial real estate would bounce back, it hasn't, and that's the bulk of property tax bases. On the one hand, that's really daunting. We can't just say, oh, we can do what Cleveland did, we can do what Boston did, we can do what Portland did. There is no national model. So it's really do or die for every city. And for a city like Pittsburgh, every single year we are losing people. We lose people, the city proper loses families to the suburbs as soon as their kids get school age. We lose people who are coming here to college and maybe they're going somewhere else because that's what the job was, or they're returning to their home country if they're an international student. Pittsburgh as a city cannot sustain itself on this status quo. We ran on fumes for a very long time, but we're lucky we got this far, but Pittsburgh does have to grow. It has to grow economically, it has to grow in a sense of an opportunity there. Any lack of that means that we're really just gonna continue hitting this wall in a very, very painful way. And in terms of opening up to new people, I think that if you love your home, everyone in here loves Pittsburgh. Something that you love should be shared with other people. But even beyond that, if we are enjoying success, if we are enjoying access, if we are enjoying capital, things like that, those are things that we have to share with people too. Whether it's people who have been here for a long time and have never been given any sort of fair shot at that, or if someone who's brand new here and trying to make their way. We have to be able to share, and at times like move as individuals, move aside to give other people the chance to thrive in that sense if we want them to pick this place and stay in this place.
But if you want to talk about growth, the colleges and universities in this town are right now dealing with record enrollments. I mean, record enrollments. I mean, as someone who has either taught or consulted in every college in this city, I can tell you, 31 years at Carnegie Mellon is like an island, okay? It's over there. It's, those students, they'll go 4 years, they've never gone downtown or what have you. But the enrollment is huge. It's overwhelmingly Asian. I know, I had a lot to do with that, all right? Penn is exploding right now. Is totally exploding and is turning out, especially in medical and all that, jobs for which, individuals for which there are jobs in the med-tech environment. Duquesne has got record enrollment. Point Park is close to its record enrollment from the down of the pandemic and what have you. And so they're bringing all these young people to Pittsburgh, and perhaps we're not doing a really good job of working with them to say, here's the opportunities here. I mean, I've become, at Point Park, I'm like, you know Point Park's got like the best dance program in the United States. And part of the attraction is, if they don't go to Juilliard, they come to Point Park. And the fact that we're downtown, and we've got a real downtown, there are zombies, there's homeless, there's working people, they get the New York experience. So if anything, they're kind of ready for the Big Apple. But I mean, if you want to talk about growth, the colleges and the universities are exploding. What are we doing to keep those young people here, or to tell them the values of Pittsburgh with all the things that we're talking about in terms of affordability? I just told you, my daughter just spent $1.3 million on a fixer-up in Chicago. And I'm like, can't you come home? So, I mean, there is growth occurring here, and it's growth among the demographic that we want to stay here, because they're going to live longer lives. So, I'm a collegiate guy. I'm like, we gotta hassle these kids.
So, I mean, this is an honest conversation we're having, right? And I don't think we ever designed this to be a chest-thumping discussion. But you could tell, you can get a sense. I think I can speak for the panelists and probably for everybody. We have Pittsburgh pride. I think that's something that's deeply rooted in us, whether you are a transplant, because I think you have it in some way, and we have it. And maybe we have to think about, brands can be transformational. Maybe the brand of Pittsburgh needs to be transformational in some ways. Yeah, go ahead.
With regard to brand,
something that was mentioned probably an hour ago that is really the heart of where you need to start is why. What is the point of developing this brand? Is it to get more employers to hire entry-level students? Is it to bring more visitors and more tourists into the city? Is it to get on lists like the National Geographic? What is the point of it? And that, to help focus what this needs to be. That's the start.
Yeah, I think there's a ongoing conversation after this about that. Yeah, do you have a question?
I just wanted to add to that, based on other layers. I think a problem that we're having here too is like building our value. Like, we have pride, but when we know how to introduce ourselves, like the whole Amazon almost coming to Pittsburgh thing was really difficult. And I do have a lot of pride, but that's, I think, what's breaking my heart about do I even fit in here anymore, because there's so much value not being upheld. I mean, in 30 years of living here, downtown is being reproduced for the 4th time, and my favorite era was when I got here, and there was a woman from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the town crier, literally reading the headline news, and I felt informed because it was an immersive city. It was an artistic city. Like, we're building a Ferris wheel across the street or across the river, but most people don't connect that the Ferris wheel was built here in Chicago and all these other cities how long before we do. And the brilliance of like the connectivity between the Brooklyn Bridge, the Sisters, and the suspension bridge in Cincinnati, like that's the kind of history that I want to see more immersive in our city. I was ecstatic recently when I saw the plaque about Washington again that just was put in, but there were actually actors acting out the Civil War in the moment to like give people the embodiment of what we are as a brand. And personally, I've always thought it was really sad to go like Ellis Island in New York City with a city full of actors and there's no one helping you immerse people. I think that's how we get the youth connected to the future. Because how do you want to bring people here to be innovators, growers, builders, but like let's get people excited about how that industry, a ton of industries, been rooted here in Pittsburgh. Unions, the Heinz history, like they created uniforms. My favorite exhibit is the pickle gherkin portfolio with the Heinz History Center, because who knew that we were so influential unless you hear about Picklesburgh and like why Picklesburgh. There's like that next level of like super value that I think we're missing and moving into the future with.
It's like a small world, everything kind of comes back.
Yeah, wonderful perspective. Mary?
I had a great experience a couple weeks ago. U.S. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who is Senator from Michigan, was in town, and she called us and asked if she and her chief of staff could stop by. And she wanted to see the Carey furnaces, and she said to me, Detroit wouldn't be Detroit without Pittsburgh. And I love that a U.S. Senator from another state, and granted she's young and badass and cool and everything, but like it wasn't all about her pitching her state. She was saying this, Detroit wouldn't be Detroit. And so I think back to telling stories, but also not believing that people want to hear those stories outside of our own conversation. I think there are so many opportunities to tell those stories in a remarkable way.
Okay, we've got a little more time left. Any more questions? Who has a question from the audience for the panelists? Yeah, go ahead, shout it out.
Hi, I'm right here. Hi, everybody. There was an article in the Pittsburgh Courier, and to bring it back to diversity, well, let me rewind it all the way back here. I guess I'm a boomerang. I'm born and raised in Rankin, and then I went away. My parents on the farm towards Marion, and I went to Edinburgh University and went to DC. The only reason why I moved back to Pittsburgh was because of the job. I got hired at PNC for a contracting position, and now I work for a nonprofit that particularly was working at DEI, and that term was kind of taken away. And I saw a lot of our local businesses, once that term was kind of pulled out of certain situations, and pulled out of the company that I worked for. And I saw an article not too long ago in the Pittsburgh Courier, and the job that I work at, we help people find jobs essentially through our members, let's say that. And there was an article in the Pittsburgh Courier saying that Pittsburgh had tied for the worst for Black professionals to find jobs. So I'm just wondering, and I work for Google, I work for PNC, GNC, I work for because I'm a contractor, that's what I do, and I was supposed to be here for a year, and I was gonna move back to DC and live my city title of life, and everything there, because I thought, but I've grown to love Pittsburgh over the last 8 years that I've been here. So I've had certain privileges outside of some of my counterparts and finding jobs and everything. So I just wonder, I see certain people on the town that work for Duquesne and Duolingo, it's just like, what is that disconnection? And I've just been seeing with, like I said, my friends and I have been struggling to find a job. I only work part-time right now and everything. So I'm just wondering, we keep talking about brand and culture and everything, and I'm just wondering where we're lacking. It is kind of tricky to see, I don't see Kendra in here, and I don't see anybody else that looks like me. So I'm wondering where that disconnection is and why do we, here in Pittsburgh, it's just a big disconnect. We're talking about all the great things here, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer in this conversation. It's great to hear about Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh, especially coming from Rankin. Sometimes they don't even consider Rankin part of Pittsburgh, but it is. To me, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? So I've just seen different spectrums of everything. I'm just trying to wonder why we have that disconnect here. So
I would just say that's literally why I took the job at Duolingo. I didn't do social impact, corporate social responsibility, any of that before this. I worked in the corporate music business, then I was a professor. What excited me about that role, I was doing cultural organizing in the Hill and all that stuff. I was doing that kind of work outside of the corporate system. But the reason why I took the job was because the job description said, hey, we want you to build a global strategy. We want you to do all that, but first, we really need to build better relationships with the neighborhood where we are in East Liberty. And I'm like, oh, snap. I went to Rogers and Garfield. I went to Capitol when it was in Homewood. I hung out on Penn Avenue, used to go to David Shoes. Like, I got this. This is what I can do. And so, I wouldn't have taken the role if I didn't feel like I'd be the kind of person to try to help answer some of those questions. Questions that I'm still asking of, how do we close the opportunity gap? Why is it that, I can count on my hand how many people that from here actually work here? You know what I mean? It's specific roles. That's a question I ask myself every day, and my why for social impact is to close that gap of, our mission is to, develop the best education in the world, make university available. But what are those barriers that are preventing people from being able to, access, the privilege of being in this building? And that's why I do every day. And it's a question I think a lot of people are asking. It's almost like, I'm not even just talking about with Duolingo. I think just in general, tech and other industries like that, there's always a secret society of people that just get it. They went to all the right schools all along the path. They went to college, they know how to ask the right questions in interviews. I've had people who we got into a position to interview for roles, and they bombed the interview because it's almost like they have told themselves they don't deserve to be in the room, right? So there is the opportunity issue, but then there's also the mindset issue of is this even for me? Because there's that they see or they sense the secret society that they're not a part of, and whereas someone like me who's underestimate me, but I know where I'm supposed to be, that's not everybody's story. So there's a level of privilege that I have, similar to what you said, is you can be both underrepresented, distressed, and also have a level of privilege. And so my goal every day is trying to figure out how to close that gap. And it's on both sides. It's first, how do we create more opportunity? On the other side is telling people that look like us that you deserve to be in these spaces too, and these are for you as well. So I was happy when I saw you
Christian?
First of all, I really respect the work that you do at Duolingo and your why, so thank you for sharing that. And I'll say that part of what brought me to Duquesne Light close to 4 years ago now was the opportunity to work for the first Black CEO of the utility in its 100-plus-year-old history, because I knew that he would be bringing a fresh vision to how we create the workforce of the future. And one of the keys in our sort of story is around partnerships. This is back of the envelope math, but to the jobs question, we're hiring close to 1,000 people over the next 3 years to modernize our region's electrical grid. And so we have significant hiring needs that are coming our way. And the partners that we work with, whether it's A. Philip Randolph Institute, the Urban League, Partners for Work, being very strategic about creating relationships where they may not naturally exist because of the ways we're separated by the neighborhoods we live in this city has been one of the strategies that we're trying to deploy. I would say with mixed success. But I love working with a leadership team that's really committed to it. So thanks for the question.
Okay, yes, I think we've got time for one, maybe two more questions. Haley?
I was just going to add, similar to a lot of the comments, I think I'm a professional recruiter here in the city. And I think that one of the challenges, Christine, Kendra, both of you guys touched upon it, and the woman up here, is how, as a town, how do we combine history to heritage, right? Because as an executive recruiter, a lot of folks, I think, are intimidated by the history of Pittsburgh. And they want to be able to make their mark on their own. Like if they're not a, like you said, Georgia, bald white guy that likes pierogies and knows who Willie Sturgill is, will they be able to make their mark? And there is, I think an outside reputation because we have such a strong history, that they're afraid they're not going to be able to make their mark and help develop the city with their preferences and how they view the world, right? I mean, there's still such, I think, a powerful history there, which is a beautiful thing. But I think the challenge is how do we convince, young professionals that yes, there is a strong history there, but it's still a small enough city that you can make your mark and you can help change it. You don't have to be a pierogi-eating, Willie Sturgill, white, middle-aged man to fit in, and you can create our heritage, our future, and still honor the past. So I think that's a challenge from a recruiting standpoint of because we're so rich in history.
Thank you. Does anyone want to respond to that? It's possible, right? I think we talked about that I call it a beautiful tension between the past and the future. Okay, question up here?
Yeah, I love the discussion. The takeaway for me is, as a native Pittsburgher, is one about tension. That came out clearly. So you're navigating all these different tensions. It's very dynamic and active and complex and rich and difficult. So from your perspectives, have you seen other communities navigate this well? And exclude maybe like the real titans, like New York, LA, Chicago, just that have such big personas and reputations. But is there another city that is, in your opinion, really doing this well, navigating diversity, navigating kind of the institutional weight in the community, navigating the entrepreneurial spirit?
I have a take on that, and it's completely personal, no data, no broad. But Houston had so much money, very wealthy individuals, a few foundations, huge corporations. All of the sort of interactive and collaborative things that were set up, to me, were run by institutions and organizations. What I love about Pittsburgh is, first of all, we're having a conversation like this. There are community organizations that are run by the people in the neighborhood. There's a sense of, and that might be the good and the bad about all the neighborhoods, but there is a grassroots, get out there and create something, culture that I did not see in Houston, where it was much bigger, but the money was running, what are they going to focus on? I think here, individuals have an opportunity to be heard, and we often are heard if we speak up loud enough. You look like you disagree.
I just went through an atrocious situation in Lawrenceville, and the East End has been suffering greatly for quite a long time, again, back to micro business districts. And I'm calling them micro because we're 5 people or less and putting our lives on the line to literally create the communities that we want to see, to be contributors to the neighborhood, to be passionate about the thing that we see missing that we want to put back out into the world. And that's why Pittsburgh's been so amazing. But the affordability is out of control. The disrespect that the city can offer permits to construction zones without giving you any notification whatsoever that they're going to come in and disrupt their business for 10.5 months is not valuing the people who are making the communities what they are. This is where my passion is coming from, but it's also a little hard to be sitting in front of the artificial intelligence sector of the world and realize that there's such an imbalance, that we're so excited to get industry to move here, But again, we're not valuing the people that are creating the communities that the visitors want to come. 80% of my customers were from out of town. Buffalo is my number 2 market. I pay attention to these things, and I'm so excited to like know who they are and feel their excitement. Where do I go outside of Nancy? And you go to this restaurant who does this good for the neighborhood or this for the community or whatever. Those are the people that are creating the experiences that we outsiders are actually having here. And I'm unfortunately not going to have a storefront during the NFL draft, and it's really sad for me.
There are gonna be pop-ups. I heard Corey talk
If
about
somebody wants to
pop-ups.
find me and someone wants to help resolve all the issues that I've had for the last 2 years, that would be great. I think those are incredible perspectives and points of view, but they're also not realistic for the hills that we have to climb to get back up from the fact that like my favorite, people who would have favored my shop are now sitting in 45 minutes of traffic because there's simultaneous construction zones on Penn Avenue, Butler Street, Water Authority, all the authorities coming. And when you talk to the foremen who are like amazing human beings trying to help get through the situation with you in a very difficult capacity, this is a little bit bigger than Pittsburgh. It's like city and state stuff.
I was gonna say, this is what it's called to be in the city. So do we want growth or do we want clear driveways? I mean, that's not to diminish what you're experiencing.
I want someone to actually forecast that every small business is gonna need assistance with the gas line bill that is being restricted of helping me pay anything. Or the fact that like my insurance company won't cover, for me to get a new paint job from the disruption because it's not considered a natural disaster. The value is we have to have this stuff done, but we have to value each other to have this growth occur where we can all grow together.
I totally
in every
agree.
neighborhood.
So, but to tie it back to your question, I don't think other cities of our size are doing it that much better. I think from a personal standpoint, diversity-wise, I would like to see our numbers shift, and that feels different than other places. But I do think that Pittsburgh has a unique opportunity to city, unlike any other way we've seen city. I think we have an opportunity. I think we need to explore the idea of what we think a city is supposed to do and what's supposed to offer. And I think these kind of conversations can help, but then what's next? And who else is missing? Because it's nice that I'm here, but I'm gonna tell you the reason why I'm here is because this lady right here. She was like, oh, wait a minute. Kendra, you need to be a part of this conversation too. So like, we have more Christines that say that and continue to have these conversations, but then what's part 2? And totally respecting your situation as well, but I don't want to lose sight of why we are here.
No, and I want to add to why that even came up was because having done extra homework, it was discovered that like 9 institutions were not notified, including my local business administrator and corporation, that this was even going to occur. So back to respect and value and like all growing together, there has to be a way that we can all grow together
Absolutely.
on many different levels that are still not being discussed, right?
So let's do this, because I want to come back to part 2, but let's wrap this up. And I want to just kind of go down the line. Don, I want to start with you, just a takeaway from tonight's conversation.
There was a native Pittsburgher by the name of Gertrude Stein who coined the phrase about Oakland, there is no there there. As someone who has worked around the world, I had a campus in Silicon Valley, you know what? There is no there there. There's different companies. I've been a faculty member for the Arizona State University for 13 years. Phoenix exploding. There is no there there. Pittsburgh has a there. And that's what we should be focusing on. The there.
Thank you.
Very existential.
Christine.
I am very curious about where these conversations go from here. I think it's great to have these discussions. Conversation without action just sort of leaves us in a circle. So I'm curious on that front. But that said, it's been a lovely evening, and only in Pittsburgh, and the Blue Angels, they're like an elite flying group, the famous planes. Okay, they do these routines, and they get back on the ground, and they all look. They have this habit, or this practice. They all look around at each other, and they go through. They analyze the flight patterns and what could we have done better? Man, I should have gone left, and I went right. And they always finish their feedback session with, "Just glad to be here." So I'm just glad to be here.
Just guys. Glad to still be alive, right? Kendra.
I'll just say this, I get invited to a lot of tables, and that's a privilege that I have, but sometimes I get uninvited because I say the thing that's not said at the table. So invite me to the table, but invite me back, I promise. Yeah, it's all love, I love everybody, and my heart is in the right place, but my motto is tell the truth and leave people whole, and I will continue to do that. And I'm happy to be in part 2 of whatever the conversation is.
Yes.
Thank you. Tracy.
I would have to say I've been a part of these conversations for a number of years, given my role at Pop City and NEXTpittsburgh. And I actually find this one to have been more positive than just about any of the others, which I find very encouraging, especially the whole panel. I mean, overall positive. There are plenty of problems in Pittsburgh, we know that. But I think as a city, we're finally starting to believe in ourselves more. And I think that, more than anything, is going to take us into the future.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, one big takeaway, not just from what the panel said, from the audience participation as well. Pittsburgh really has an abundant share of resources when it comes to like human and cultural capital. We have people who want to be here and people who want this place to succeed. People are always able to diagnose the problems, and I think at that point, at a certain point, the responsibility does fall to institutions, to people in power and have the ability to make decisions to shape this. Doesn't matter if it's hard, doesn't matter if you're gonna leave people unsatisfied, they have the right to still demand more and say, no, we can do better. We can make this a city where more people succeed, where more people have just as much access to prosperity as anyone else. The fact that it's gonna be difficult isn't an excuse to not do it or to desist from efforts. A failure to really make that brand one in which everyone can succeed and have equitable success. If we don't get that, we're not gonna be much of a city worth branding.
Thank you. Mary?
I'm gonna go back to people also, be an activist, speak up, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, but then surround yourself with people that you can have a broader voice together. But get on boards, run for office, volunteer, get off your couch and out into the community, and get your neighbors, the guy next door to come out too, and keep speaking up. I think that's a heritage of Pittsburgh too, is we like to make ourselves heard. But we gotta be loud and organized.
Thank you. So here's my takeaway, that we have amazing potential. Evan, did you say unfulfilled potential? I would agree. And we have this base, this foundation, at least something to build on, which is that Pittsburgh pride. But here's the big kicker for me. I thought the tension, what I call beautiful tension, was between our past and our future. I don't think that's it. I think the tension is what you were alluding to. It's between kind of mom and pop, small business, and kind of big corporate organizations or institutions. And where's the equity, the organization, the orchestration, the coordination, and the conversation around all of that? How do we grow together? That's, I think, part of our job, right? Is how do we kind of weave these stories together into a harmonious brand that we can all relate to? I mean, the brand of Pittsburgh is a living design challenge. And we're all part of it, right? People that live here, sleep here, eat here, care here, we're the owners of the brand moving forward. So I think the tension is a little different than what I thought it was. There's this saying that great ideas start when the panel ends. I think that's what we should do. We should continue this conversation. And there should be a part 2 to this. Maybe the part 2 starts with all of us, kind of what our takeaways when we go home tonight and talk to our significant others, or our friends tomorrow, or our colleagues tomorrow. So yeah, I was at this event last night. We were talking about the brand of Pittsburgh. Maybe that's how it starts, grassroots kind of organization. You guys, again, have all been part of branding conversations before. Maybe this is different. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. So let's continue this conversation. I want to thank all the panelists. Really appreciate your time for being here. For being open, honest, transparent. I mean, that is a really healthy conversation and not easy to do. I want to thank again the Grapevine folks. Sometimes we call ourselves the Grape Nuts. George Potts, Brian is back here. Come on, you guys get out here. Brian from Lannisburg, Brian from Pete, stand up. Doug, where's Doug? Doug, stand up. Yeah, over here. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. You know, we're again, as I mentioned earlier, we just came together as a couple folks saying we should do something. We should be civically minded. Let's do something to be part of our community. So this is a contribution for that. And we have drinks on us over at the Federal Galley. Right, yeah, snaps all around. Pete, how's this gonna work? Do you know how this is gonna work? We're gonna charge us all the George Potts account?
Exactly, George Potts. Say, put on the Grapevine tab, and that should work. George can set it up.
Okay, seriously.
Yes.
Grapevine tab.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's what we're gonna do. We are rewriting the story of Pittsburgh. We're gonna continue to write it together. Thank you all very much for that. Let's go over to the Federal Galley.